Sekeres Price for February 6th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're thinking of a staycation with a game, if you're thinking of Valentine's Day, call the Wall. Request the Sekeres Price rate. It's back. Some blackout dates apply. 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Greg Sassett and Switches conducting things alongside intern Madison Buckingham, and we got a big show coming up for you. It's brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Langley, in particular, and the 2023 Rogues are still around with a 24-month lease, 0% on selected trims. Yeah, 0%. Go check it out. Applewood Nissan in Langley. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today: do you want the Canucks to spend the assets for another all-in trade? And as always with our poll questions, we invite you to define all in as you see fit. For example, on Friday, we talked about the asking price of Chris Tanev, a second-round pick and a prospect. Well, to me, Tanev is a player of the stature, and the return is such that that would qualify as an all-in trade. If we're talking about like a fifth-round pick for Nick Seeler, I'm not sure that's
not
an all-in trade.
No.
So define it how you see fit. You can vote yes or no at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. What says you, Price? Another all-in, another big swing here?
I mean, the devil is in the details, but I'll try to avoid a qualified answer here. I'll say yes. I think there's a path to make an all-in trade without sacrificing the future too gravely. So that would be the challenge, is trying to make sure you've still got the young players who need to populate this roster over the next 2 to 3 seasons when they start to get some cap hits that really hurt them. So if you can find that narrow path where you haven't sacrificed too much of the immediate future where they're going to need some of that young help, then yeah, you do it.
So when you say the future, do you mean Tom Wielander and Jonathan Lekramaki? Like, is that the entirety of the future as you see it?
I wouldn't spend
future first round picks, I guess, would be on that.
I wouldn't spend those two guys for a guy with no term. For a guy with term, I could be convinced.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like, you know, the guys like Podkolzin, I think Podkolzin's on this roster next season. You know, all things being equal. So, boy, you better be pretty convinced that this rental is worth it. And like Podkolzin wouldn't be for a guy with term. That would be a rental price to trade away a guy like Podkolzin. But, you know, he's leading the AHL team in goals. Like, he's tracking well again. Vasily Podkolzin is. He's an NHL body. Like, there's lots to like there. I would be reticent.
I suppose Podkolzin could be involved in a trade for a player with term, but
with extra stuff. Yeah. So I think you got to be careful, but I'm certainly not against it.
So I have for several weeks now been, if you're all in, you're all in. Like, that is a declarative, definitive statement. There is no half measure there. There's no gray area. We've used the term pot committed a whole lot. So for me, after you made the Lindholm trade, you're all in now. And I do think you can make a compelling case that this will be your best chance over the next 3 or 4 years. While you have Lindholm, or while you have Pettersson and Hronek on reasonably affordable contracts, while Oliver Ekman-Larsson isn't costing you as much as he will in future seasons, while you have Lindholm now, of course, but also while you have, just as Rutherford said at the beginning of the year, everything going right here. JT Miller continues to be much more than a point per game player at age 30. Brock Besser, 30 goals going into the unofficial second half here against the Carolina Hurricanes on Tuesday. This bottom six performing so well, some of them on expiring contracts like Teddy Bluger and Dakota Joshua, Sam Lafferty. You made the Zadorov trade, lest we forget, right? Ian Cole's on the 1-year deal. Myers is playing better, and he's expiring as well. So, you know, even DeSmith, the backup goaltender, was a massive issue last year. It's been excellent this year. So, while all of this is in your favor, and with all the uncertains and, you know, all the knowns going forward of being being a more expensive Pettersson, a more expensive Hronek, maybe Lindholm if you keep him, plus having to replace some of these guys who have performed so well in your bottom six and on the blue line. Yeah, I think you're all in. I know it's a tough looking West, but I'm not sure you can gauge the competitiveness of the conference over an extended period of time. Like I think Edmonton.
Do you mean in years to come?
I mean in terms of making the decision of going all in. Yeah, Edmonton, I think, is going to be there so long as McDavid and Draisaitl are there, right? But you look around and you go, okay, it's competitive this year. Well, it could be just as competitive next year. It could be more competitive
completely
in future years. If Edmonton gets all their crap together, they could be an absolute behemoth, a Tampa Bay style team going forward, right? Where the road to the Stanley Cup leads through them.
And I don't think that we're going to see the departure of, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Jack Eichel from the Western Conference anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Unless you're running up the white flag year after year, every once in a while, you've got to push chips in and say, let's try to win the cup now. And for as good as all those players are, more so with Edmonton than the other two, but that's still a very imperfect Edmonton team. I don't think you can turtle on the Oilers right now.
No, I mean, you can't turn them into the unbeatable. No, not the way you manage anyways. Look, astonished we're here. I mean, I think there's one through line through all the discussion of the Vancouver Canucks from, the end of last season through to here is that everybody is surprised that they're the first place team in the Western Conference, but here you are, manage accordingly. Let's get to today's top story, and it's brought to you by Mr. Lube. Welcome aboard, Mr. Lube. Arshdeep Bains, Surrey's Arshdeep Bains, the American Hockey League All-Star Game MVP. He led all scorers with 2 goals and 3 assists. He had the game-winning goal. He showed his defensive chops. He's amongst the American Hockey League's leading scorers. Beefed up on assists, lots of assists, making plays, and is the leading scorer for the Abbotsford Canucks.
It's a wonderful story. It feels like found money because it is. They signed this guy out of the Western League, and we see a lot of overage leading scorers of CHL teams that I don't think get even to this point of being league leaders on their American League team. It's a different world in the professional ranks. So the fact that he's turned himself into one of the top call-up possibilities for a really good team, I mean, it's a testament to how hard Arshdeep Bains has worked. And by all accounts, it is not just about the offense for Arshdeep Bains. It's about a conscientious player that can be trusted in a lot of different scenarios. And that could prove to be very helpful. If the Canucks win a round, if they can extend their season, I mean, it's a black ace, I think. I think for sure he's going to be there as a utility club to bring in. And again, it's been so long since Canuck fans remember everything changes. Remember, folks, when you win a round, your AHL team is probably gone at that point from the American League playoffs, and you start to have a few more options at your disposal. Guys like him who are older, they're not growing into their bodies anymore. Like Arshdeep Bains is a man. They can lean on him. He can get a spot duty in a game 4 and a game 3 to keep hopes alive. So he's going to be a useful player. Whether he gets a call up in the regular season, I don't know. But I think he's going to be practicing with the Vancouver Canucks at some point.
Hey, I mean, one of the guys we'll talk to today, Frank Curado, dropped into a playoff series. You remember that? Going way back. Another name we've talked about here, Chris Tanev, dropped into a playoff series. So, yeah, and the Gillis regime used to also talk about, even if they don't play, just having them up with the NHL club and associating with everything about the big club. That is part of their development, getting accustomed to all of that, going through a training session with the strength and conditioning coach and all of those things. So, yeah, one of the big fascinations for these Canucks in the final couple of months of the season here is going to be whether or not you, because you are You know you're going to the playoffs. Now, you do want to finish first, so it's still a competitive environment. But do you find occasion to integrate some of these players from Abbotsford who are earning it, whether that's Arshdeep Bains, whether that's Podkolzin, whether that's Atu Ratu, some of the guys who are performing well down on the farm.
Top story brought to you by Mr. Lube, now providing tire service and sales with no appointment needed. Of course, they're known for their oil change, warranty approved oil change. They're the pioneer of the no appointment oil change, and they're 100% Canadian. 16 locations in the Lower Mainland. For one near you, go to mrlube.com.
I used the location on Arbutus Street, and our friends at Mr. Lube told me, oh, that's a busy one. And yet still, I don't wait there.
Nah.
They do a hell of a job.
Place.
This from our friend Dave Hall of Canucks Army. It's been quite the year for Canucks prospects. Arshdeep Bains, just talked about. Lekramaki, World Junior MVP. Ty Mueller, that's Mueller, 4th round pick, 105th overall in the past entry draft. He's a Hobey Baker finalist at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Sorry, not finalist. Hobey Baker nominee.
Mm-hmm.
They pare down the list.
Yes.
And then there's this from last night in Boston, Monday night in Boston. Tom Wielander and Aiden Celebrity heading to the 71st Beanpot Tournament final. Boston University avenges its loss in a number 1 versus number 2 game to crosstown rival Boston College of a week or so ago. They win 4-3 at the TD Garden, the big house. Wielander, +2, 5 shot attempts, shot on goal, blocked 2 shots. And they'll be facing Canucks prospect Jackson Dorrington, a defenseman with Northeastern, who is a 6th round pick from the 2022 draft.
That's a pretty peppy game for Wielander because, of course, Lane Hudson is sort of the go-to offensive
He's
defenseman.
the offensive defenseman there. Yes.
So for Wielander to get 5 shots on goal in a game means he's being particularly spunky, and that's good because I think they see him as a two-way defenseman that's capable of contributing, but you don't want him to forget how to play offense because Lane Hudson is the guy gobbling up all those offensive minutes, particularly on power plays, and I'm sure Hudson will continue to get those priority looks. But Wielander's clearly activating still when appropriate and being involved. It's good.
Elias Lindholm, his Vancouver Canucks debut against the Carolina Hurricanes on Tuesday. Look, 5 players, existing players, and then a 6th in Lindholm who was all participated in the All-Star game. Do you anticipate that there may be any All-Star weekend hangover from this huge contingent of Canucks who attended?
If they played last night, I would have said yes. I think a couple of nights.
Leafs certainly looked like they had a hangover.
I think you're in the team hotel for 2 nights, probably pretty quiet nights after a busy weekend. 2 quiet nights in the hotel and static, no travel, 2 practices. Like I like that recipe. I think they should be fine. If it was last night, I'd be more concerned. The extra night of sleep and getting the second full practice, I think they'll be okay.
Against a very good Carolina Hurricanes team, as Jeff Patterson remarked yesterday on the show, Monday on the show, as good as the Canucks have been since Christmas, the Hurricanes have 1 more point than Vancouver in that time frame. And in fact, it was their loss here in Vancouver in early December that really was a turning point in this Hurricane season. They had a players only meeting, and from that point forward, they have been playing excellent hockey. The 2 best coaching mugs in the game, I would argue, Rick Tocchet and Rod Brindamore. If you were going to ask, what is it, chat GPT, show me a hockey coach, they would look like Tocchet or Brindamore, right?
They look
2
like hockey
former
players.
Flyers.
I don't know if they look like hockey coaches.
You don't think so?
They look like hockey players.
Oh, come on, Blake.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think
I love it when Rod gets fiery there. The pride of Campbell River gets fiery on the bench.
I still think of a fedora when I think of hockey coach.
Are you like 107 years old?
I feel like it sometimes. Yeah, I do. Carolina does have some injuries to deal with, though. Andrei Svechnikov will not be in the lineup.
I'm sorry, like, you're of the Scotty Bowman generation. You're not of the Toe Blake
No, I know, but I'm just going like central casting route, like in my mind.
Notwithstanding.
Yes.
Do you remember when Beliveau died and we got the story that the team was out here for, I forget, it was a training camp or exhibition or whatnot, and they needed a new captain? And Toe Blake passed the fedora around to put names in the hat and then counted up the ballots, and it was Beliveau. And it's great imagery if you're a hockey historian or hockey fan. Okay. Brind'Amour versus Tocchet, two strict systems.
I don't suspect they'll go Tortorella in a hall, but it would be very entertaining if it happened.
Oh, could you imagine Tocchet and Brind'Amour get into it in between the glass? We got Patrick in the league. It can't happen.
That's right.
Yesterday, the London Police Service on Monday held its much-awaited press conference on the sexual assault charges for 5 hockey players, 4 NHLers, stemming from an incident with the World Junior Hockey Team, Canadian World Junior Hockey Team, in 2018. By now, you are familiar with all of the details there. Michael McLeod of the New Jersey
Devils. Available details. We don't have all the details.
All the available details that have been released publicly. Mike McLeod of the New Jersey Devils facing a couple of charges there, as is his teammate Cal Foote, the son of Vancouver Canucks assistant coach Adam Foote, Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers, Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, and Alex Formenton, ex of the Ottawa Senators, now playing in Switzerland. The London Police Service went to the extraordinary step, Blake, of apologizing to the victim, and they did call her the victim, for the amount of time it has taken to reach this point. And in fact, if not for the outcry regarding the use of registration monies from across the country from just minor hockey players to settle the civil side
of this and
others, you do wonder whether the London police would have pursued it as doggedly as they wound up pursuing it, but sitting here apologizing for it.
Undoubtedly, they've turned up more information. They said that they did, but you do have to think that there was enough even back then to dig up if they so wanted. They said that no investigators from the original investigation are on the case right now. So you do wonder if, and they refuse to get into the details about anybody being suspended for, derelict duty or anything like that in the original investigation. But I suspect that there are some guys that got at least a reprimand of some sort for not figuring out that this deserved charges back in the day.
And they went through lengths talking about how these are difficult cases. And of course, the participation of the victim sometimes is, anyways, we're here now. Charges are going forward. In fact, after the formal proceedings kind of became a back and forth with the police and media there. I know you were listening in.
The police blaming just like not sports media per se, but just world media of the sexualization of women, like that, saying basically that contributed to this. And I think the lack of,
and then
charges,
the media firing back about your investigation and why did it stop? And it was only because of
when victims see that it takes 6 years to get charges, that might be a big reason, why they
anyways
come forward.
Offshoot from this, Darren Dreger reporting the Flyers, Devils, and Flames, the 3 teams that have players involved in this matter, have been informed they will receive cap relief for the players on leave. Now, I have yet to see it specified whether that is going to be the NHL sort of removing these cap hits, setting them aside, or whether they're going to be LTIR eligible, as was the case with Slava Voinov when he faced charges on a domestic.
So contrasting reports on this. I'm very confused as to where we're at with all this. And I think the NHL is going to look long and hard at this because of the PR backlash if they make a step wrong here. So we'll see where this ends up. But the other thing is sort of was an aha moment. And I don't know that this is necessarily new news, but I had not really just put together the timeline of this going forward, Matt, and that, even if exonerated, that's not happening in the next 5 months. Like these 5 players Like, even if completely exonerated, innocent on all charges, that's not going to happen for a long time. Like, the trial's not going to be for a bit here. So
it is going to be quite a...
Like, I saw some people thinking maybe 2 years till this is all wrapped up. Again, whether that's accurate or not, we'll find out. But I don't think it's anywhere in the 6 to 12 month range. So these players will see a pause in their NHL career, like few we've seen before.
Right. Cody Severson of Canucks Army wondering if teams come out after they draft these players and talk about how we did our homework, they're good character people.
Yeah.
Should they get this get out of jail free card with regards to the cap? Should these players have to sit on these teams' cap and show?
Okay, so I read that. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I read this too. And I thought, okay, I can see this both ways. Now, if you get cap relief, is there an incentivization there for the clubs to come down more harshly on the players they have under their umbrella currently? Because they know, we don't have to be loyal to this player. We're going to get cap relief on his $6 million. Maybe it's a superstar player, $12 million player, but I get full cap relief of that because he's been an idiot in the past. Oh, we're not going to defend him and come up with a whole litany of excuses for him. No, they make him pay for it, and we get cap relief for it. So I can see that both ways, that, there's a front end responsibility, but there's also, an off ramp taken away if they get cap relief.
Yeah. I honestly don't know how I feel about it. In the case of the New Jersey Devils, for example, this is two players. You're in a playoff fight and you've just been handed, and maybe I'm a little bit influenced by the fact that for the last several years, cap space has been like manna from heaven, right? With a flat cap and revenues not underpinning increases in the cap like we had seen before. And this being the last season where basically it is one heck of an exercise for organizations to get under the cap and stay under the cap. I do find that is a competitive advantage right now for a team that's had two players charged with a horrible episode. And yet that is a very good counterpoint that you just brought, because teams not protecting players in scenarios like this is a place I think we want to get to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Teams looking at this holistically with a human eye and not a hockey eye is a place we want to get to.
The other thing that rubs me the wrong way here is, other teams saw this coming. The Ottawa Senators walked away from an 18-goal scorer. He's on a 20-goal pace
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So I don't buy the Calgary Flames, who said we didn't see this coming when Dylan Dubé went on mental leave. They just came out and said that again. Like, I'm sorry, the Ottawa Senators saw this coming 2 years ago. Dylan Dubé himself a year ago said, I'm, updated the situation, said I'm cooperating with the investigation, all that. Like, sorry, Calgary, you're not looking if you say that you had no idea. Everybody else had ideas. Guys were extended. Guys were given new contracts. Like, there's a buyer beware aspect to that. And I'll credit the Ottawa Senators.
Which have not been the most functional or detailed organization.
But Alex Formanton, probably on a skill sense, should be a National Hockey League player.
He'd be one of the fastest skaters in the league today. He can absolutely fly.
Yeah.
That's why he was drafted in the second round. That's why he was a member of this
You
World
don't walk
Junior
away
team.
from 18-goal young players.
Right.
But the Ottawa Senators said,
at 22, 21, whatever he was.
Not touching.
And we would get messages from, like, is Formanton available? Because remember, back then, the Canucks were ostensibly, well, they weren't officially rebuilding because they didn't do that, but a lot of their fans wanted them to rebuild. Were scouring young talent around the league and wondering, we would get messages to the inbox about Formanton. Well, hey, Senators aren't interested in this guy, 18 goals and can really skate. Like, why aren't the Canucks on that? Well,
there's a reason.
Yeah. Also, just before we leave this file, So not just these 5 players, but every player on the 2018 Canadian World Junior team remains suspended by Hockey Canada, ineligible to play, coach, officiate, volunteer with Hockey Canada sanctioned programs pending an appeal process. This is of the Hockey Canada investigation. Remember, it was delayed, or at least the results thereof. That all said, if you're wondering about this 4-nation face-off next season for the National Hockey League, Canada, United States, Sweden, and Finland, that is an NHL event. It is not a IIHF or Hockey Canada sanctioned event. So every player on the 2018 Canadian World Junior team would be eligible, other than, of course, the 5 players who have been charged, to participate for Canada in that event.
Well,
and
heck,
that entails Cale Makar.
There were some people suggesting, hey, we're not IIHF. We could do a Russian team. The Russians are in the league. It's a league event. Why couldn't you do a Russian team? But they refused to go down that boulevard as well.
Speaking of Russians, Evgeny Kuznetsov has taken leave of the Capitals to receive care from the Player Assistance Program. We had talked about the Capitals simply because they are a Vancouver Canucks opponent this weekend, part of a back-to-back morning puck drop with Detroit on Saturday and Washington on Sunday, and had talked about how if you're the Capitals right now, you're 51 points. You're in a big chase for a Eastern Conference wild card. You're almost getting into must-win territory before the deadline. Answer me this. I mean, at this stage of the game, would Washington be a seller? 7 points out of a playoff spot and having lost a centerman like that?
Yeah. I don't know how much shopping is to be done on that roster, to be honest. But yeah, from where they are, can you believe they have one of the richest payrolls in the league? It's unbelievable they're as bad as they are, with Ovechkin making a very fair amount of money.
Well, and for what we thought he'd be a total anchor, but Mantha's wound up having a pretty nice year here.
Yep.
All things considered. I mean, I suspect that Edmondson could probably be moved to a contender. He's playing 16 minutes a night as a big-bodied defenseman, right? He's a rental guy as well. And Obey Kubel could move as a rental as well. And Pacioretty, who hasn't played a lot this year, just the 12 games, but he's on a $2 million ticket and he's got some name brand. Here's the bigger point that I wanted to make in illustrating the Capitals and where they're at. It wasn't long ago, and we'll talk to John Shannon about this actually later in the week, tomorrow, actually, Wednesday. We'll talk to Shannon about this. At one point, we surveyed the landscape and went, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of pure sellers because of how many teams are still in the playoff chase. Blake, now when you look at it, could it be a sneaky buyer's market after all? Calgary has shed a piece. Washington is falling out of it and now is set back by the Kuznetsov departure. Pittsburgh hasn't really gotten its act together after Dubas talked about how, well, I want to see how
very middling, 4-3-3 in their last 10
go here. Philadelphia without Carter Hart, are they actually going to stay in this? I mean, take a look at who they're playing in goal. And then you take a look at the West. I mean, Minnesota hasn't gotten better since Bill Guerin said, we're not out of this. We're going to see if we can stick around. Well, you're 7 points back with 5 teams to jump. I mean, St. Louis and Doug Armstrong doesn't really feel like they want to, do everything in their power just to stay in it. Every time I hear Armstrong speak or see him quoted, it's more with an eye to the future than necessarily competing this year. We're a month away from the deadline on Thursday, and I'm looking around the league and going, I think we may actually have more sellers than we initially thought. Well, and for various reasons.
The Lindholm deal was I just think a hockey trade. Like I don't know that there was a winner or a loser of that trade. We talked about that on that week. So for a big piece like Lindholm to be traded and for there not to be an exorbitant cost, I think that tells a little bit of the tale as well.
Yeah, I think so. So it should be Calgary, Minnesota, Nashville. Is Barry Trotz going to do something big in Nashville?
Now, big win for the Isles, but
Right.
last time. But I mean, they still haven't had a crazy Coach Patrick Waugh bump yet. We'll see in over a 10-game swath what that looks like. But they still don't look like that different of a team. We'll see.
Right. Let's get into today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. We're doing today's menu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
And you're cordially invited. Canucks Army, Sekeres Price are going to be hosting a game day watch party at Greta February 22nd. It's a ticketed event. Tickets go on sale today, Tuesday. You can get them nationgear.ca. That's nationgear.ca. They're $10. The event is in support of Canucks House, a Canucks Place Children's Hospice. There'll be prizes, food, drink specials, guaranteed good time. So get yourself to nationgear.ca. Get yourself some tickets for February 22nd at Greta and our watch party. We're going to talk to Frank Curado. We'll do some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter. BC Lions head coach and general manager, co-general manager Rick Campbell is joining us. And it is being reported from John Hodge of 3 Down Nation that the Lions have signed running back, or will sign. You can't sign yet. We're a week out from CFL free agency. William Stanback, who has been a sensational running back with the Montreal Alouettes for a number of years here, so much so that when he asked for and got his release, you had everyone from the owner of the team tweeting thank you to Stanback. So that has emerged since we talked to.
Yeah, we won't get a comment on that anyway because of the timing of it.
Right. Well, yeah. And a few NFL matters as well to get to later in the program.
Pretty exciting stuff regardless. Okay, let's get to our best bets for the today. A presentation of Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino. What are you looking at?
A couple of things. I was put onto this by Mina Kynes of ESPN, who tweeted about the 49ers zone rushing attack, meaning the offensive linemen move one way or the other. They don't necessarily block a guy. They block in concert. It's the best zone rushing game in the league. Kansas City is the second worst defense against the zone rushes. I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to fall into the Baltimore trap and stop running the ball, particularly on early downs against that KC defense. So 2 bets here. I wasn't brave enough to go the over on Christian McCaffrey rushing yards because it's like 90-something. And if they get behind, I just... So their backup running back, Elijah Mitchell, he's just got to get over 3.5 yards, Blake. If he gets a 4-yard rush, I win. And 49ers to score a rushing touchdown, paying us 6.5. I like the value.
I'm going back to the same game as well. Back to Tigres versus the Whitecaps at Starlight Stadium tomorrow. Player to score and their team to win the match. Brian White, remember, of all the players, might be amongst the best in form Vancouver Whitecap. He went to the U.S. men's national team camp and played a game there with them, then to Spain, meeting up with the Whitecaps. So he's probably in the best form of everybody in terms of midseason. $4.50 for White to get a goal, and that leads to a Whitecap win. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it. And that are our best bets for today's Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino featuring custom props and parlays you won't find anywhere else, speaking directly to a Vancouver sports fan. Plus a best-in-class casino with thousands of games and live dealers. See that code, get a 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price. Sports Interaction, bet local, must be 19 years of age. Please play responsibly.
Frank Curado coming up next.
Hey, gang, if you're finding yourself a little directionless with a purpose on a game night, may I recommend Greta. It's a great spot to catch the game throughout the season. They're at 50 West Cordova, so you're on foot. You're just walking to and from the game. It's a lot of fun. It's a go-to spot for food, drink specials, and fun before and after the game. They do have specials every day. They've got all-day happy hour on Wednesdays, and they've got all those arcade games to keep you busy as well. So make it a fun game night at 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar and Grill. Visit them at gretabar.com.
My family's very own whiskey, barrel-aged and set apart, marked with VO, artfully blended. impeccably crafted as a wedding gift to my son, for the bride and groom. And now, over a century later, from our very own family to yours, a legacy rooted in whiskey. Seagram's VO, growing deeper, reaching out, raising a glass to your legacy. Seagram's VO, make it your very own.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Joined now by former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Frank Curado. How we doing?
All good over here. What's going on over there?
Missing hockey, to be honest. Missing actual
Yeah,
hockey.
no, it has been a long time here between Canucks games, so looking forward to the Canucks and Canes. Because let's face it, Frank, two best coaching mugs in hockey, Rod Brind'Amour and Rick Tocchet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And like, I wonder if those guys went toe to toe right now, who would win that? Like Brind'Amour, I think, is still in the gym. Like he's still grinding. Sure. And Tocchet's just got that, like, I feel like Tocchet's got that thing where he'll just see red and kind of snap. And he's got like the real, like, not old man strength, but he's got
strength. He's got the dad strength. Yeah.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Like that dad strength. But like Rod the Bod, like I think he's still setting the tone over there in the gym. Hardest working guy.
When you watch these two teams play, how similar are they stylistically?
I think they're a little different for me. Like I think the Canucks are maybe a little more calculated, and the Canucks want to play with the puck a little bit more than the Canes. The Canes, for me, it's like it's puck pressure nonstop all game, and it's almost like they don't want to take very many chances in their own zone. So if what I've seen from them in the past still applies, it's like anytime the puck's going to be in doubt tonight, they'll just high flip it out of the zone. They'll do it 4 times in a row, or they'll go off the glass. And like, they just want to get you into positions where they're going to get you into foot races and put pressure on you and force you into mistakes, where the Canucks have elements of that. But I think the Canucks game, it's a little more crisp. It's a little more smooth. There's a little more skill involved in the way the Canucks play, because you have to understand what you have, right? Like the Canucks have high-end skill. I think the Canes have some skilled players, but as a team, the brand of hockey that they want to play, it's like if it was compared to UFC, it would be ground and pound, you know, just like put the pressure on you, force you into mistakes, and find a way to get you into submission somehow.
2 practices Sunday, Monday after the All-Star game, and the All-Stars took part on Sunday. But would you, as a coach, be at all worried about readiness of the 6 guys? And not because they were unprofessional by any stretch of the imagination, just busy and sort of yanked here and there with media availabilities and such. Is it tougher to get the 6 guys back in focus, or I guess 5 guys? No, 6. Or do you think that, you know, it's been close enough and wasn't a long travel to Carolina, they can get back onto it with a couple practices?
I think that's just a long weekend. Like it's a lot for those guys. There's a lot of media obligations. There's a lot of like getting dragged here and there to do this, to do that. And you know, I think if you go to an All-Star game, like I obviously never went in my career, but you want to enjoy all the experiences that are involved in that. Why wouldn't you? Like, you're not going to go to your hotel room at 10 o'clock and shut it down, even if you have family there, like even if you're a family guy, you have kids there, you're just doing stuff. There's so many activities for you to do. So I would expect there to be a little bit of that. Now, I don't know if that happens early in the game. Like I was at the game in Toronto last night, and you could see a little bit of that kind of fog fatigue happen later in the game. Like there was a couple breakdowns at that point. And we're like, oh, I wonder if that has anything to do with the long weekend. But listen, the guys, like, they're pretty dialed in as far as, you know, how they need to prepare for a game. And that's the nature of the beast. When you have 6 guys go to the All-Star game, there's going to be your 6 best players who are kind of affected by the schedule and all that entails. But I don't expect it to be like that big of a deal. But if they come out and they're slow and, you know, it seems like they're a little fatigued and they can't execute, you can obviously look at that and say, well, that's a viable reason as to why that would be happening.
New body in the room, though, might get them excited too, right? So you've got that as a sort of a negative pull, perhaps, but you've got Lindholm there. And if I'm Elias Pettersson, at least, I'm pretty excited.
I'm very excited if I'm him, because now it's like, listen, you have a guy who is having a down year for sure, but can be trusted in so many different situations, and you're going to get like the responsibility that you kind of like want or crave. It's like you're getting that now, and if you weren't maybe getting it a ton before, there's no reason why you wouldn't. And he should be a big bolster to the team in a number of different ways. Obviously, we talk about defensively, what he brings to the table. There's probably a little more offensive, pop there to be had this season. We've seen it in the past, but like a new player in the room. And I think it's that. I think it's an individual thing, but I think even more than that, it's just the message has kind of been sent now from the management group that you're in this and we're going to do it. And we're kind of in this win now, kind of all in mode, whatever you want to call it. I think that as a group, that has to be very energizing for everyone to know that the message has been sent. Now it's on us. And you know what? There's a month that we have here to show that, we actually really do mean business. Maybe they'll get us something even more to help us along the way. So I think that might be able to kind of counteract any, sleepiness or fatigue from whatever the All-Star weekend kind of entailed.
Well, that brings us to our poll question then, Frank. Should the Canucks spend the assets to make another all-in trade? Are they pot committed at this point?
It's so nuanced, right? Because what does that mean? Does that mean you have to get rid of your best prospects just to do it? Like, do you have to get rid of Willander and Lekaramaki just because you're all in? Like, I don't think the definition all in necessarily means that you have to expend your best prospects. Like, what if you just got to the point where you're like, we're tapped out cap wise, we're tapped out on our roster players, we like the way everything fits lower in the lineup, so like, do we need to make a move just for the sake of saying we are so all in that we traded this prospect and that prospect? You know what I mean? Like, you just get to a point where you're kind of maxed out. So like, they can still be all in and not have to kind of mortgage, players that should actually help the team sooner rather than later because they're really good and they're on good kind of trajectories. So it's interesting, but I still, like, as much as they're all in, I just don't think it has to come at the expense of making moves just for the sake of making moves to signify that you're all in.
Gotcha. I think we talked last week about Tanev, a second and a B prospect or something like that. I think some people would say that's all in.
I think
even if it doesn't,
if it doesn't
include,
see why not. Like, I don't see why not. And I think that's, like, if you look at the blue line right now, like, Carson Soucy is a little bit of a question mark just because of like the injuries, right? Like when you've had a season where those things kind of pile up, you kind of figure the next one's looming around the corner because you don't have the time. You don't have the time to kind of, not just only get back to neutral, but, recondition yourself so that you don't get hurt again. And maybe there is something that happens on the blue line that you say, okay, that can really help us because now we're 7 or 8 deep where we feel like we really have a lot of answers to whatever teams are going to throw at us.
Before you throw any more names at them here, Matt, let me ask you this, Frank. When do you believe you can win the cup? Now, you were on the 16-17 Penguins. You had Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Of course, you think you can win the cup. Do you think the Canucks in training camp, do you think in their heart of hearts, do you think they went to bed dreaming this could be the year we win the cup? When do those dreams start, and does it take a trade like that for them to wake up and realize maybe we can win the cup this year? When do you think that belief actually starts?
So it's funny, like, I wasn't there much that year, but when I got there, like, so I got traded. I first went down to Wilkes-Barre. I got called up maybe a month after that, and I was playing my first game in Buffalo. And one of the guys, like, I was talking to him, guy I knew from the past. He's like, "Yeah, man, don't worry, we're really good, and we're probably going to win the cup again this year." Like, we're like, that was one of the first conversations I had where I was. The guy was like, "How you feeling? How's travel? This and that." I'm like, "Oh, it's good, whatever." He's like, "How you feel about the game tonight?" I'm like, a little nervous, new team, all that stuff. He goes, "Don't worry, man. We're really good." And, we'll probably end up winning the cup again this year. Sure enough, I only played 2 games in the regular season that year, but I'll never forget that conversation. And so that was like, okay, these guys, they must have known that they had the chops to do it coming into the season. And then everything kind of went their way and they were really sure of themselves. And I would classify that as confidence, not cockiness.
But they had pedigree too. They had pedigree, right? You know, this Canuck group doesn't have pedigree. So like,
they don't have that because they haven't done it. But if they
right.
won a cup this year and they had the same team coming back and they got off to a great start the next season, it's like, why wouldn't you be having those exact same conversations? But
right.
like a team like that's really sure of themselves, like I think they know early on in the season. The problem in the Western Conference is, would you be surprised that when it's all said and done, if I told you one of Vancouver, Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, Colorado, or Winnipeg won the Stanley Cup this year? Would that surprise you?
Not really. No. I mean, given what we know of them in previous years, yes, but for this year, no.
For this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's a lot of viable options that could win the cup in the Western Conference this year, where I feel like that year it was the Pens and like, I don't know, maybe the Caps and then everyone else. Like it just didn't feel like there was that much as far as like legit competition. Like Chicago was on their down kind of run. LA had their success already. Like it was the Penguins' time. I don't even think Tampa Bay was ready to take that. Now, like it just felt like it was them and everyone else. And I feel like with this year, especially in the West, there's 6 teams that could legit win the Stanley Cup this year, and you wouldn't be that surprised.
Lindholm as the net front guy, Miller in the bumper, Besser and Pettersson on the flanks. At least that's how they practiced power play one. What do you make of that alignment?
It might change a million times before the playoffs. You know, like now that you have a new player and a new presence, you want to see how that all works out. But for me, like Lindholm's probably not a half wall guy. So I don't see him there. Pettersson and Besser, I actually like them both on the half wall because they provide like a one-time shooting threat when they're on their offsides, and that will open up space for Quinn Hughes. And Quinn Hughes was talking about it at the All-Star game here with Bieksa, how Sergei Gonchar is on him to shoot the puck way more. So like there's you can definitely tell there's more of an urgency, and we've been talking about that all year long, but it's just interesting to hear it from him, you know, that there's that urgency. And JT Miller, like, I think when he's in the bumper position, he has the opportunity to not just get stuck in the mud and say, well, I'm the bumper guy and this is kind of where I play. Like, I feel like he can be a little bit of a rover in that position. And that's intriguing for me because I feel like that's similar to the Edmonton power play where, you know, Nugent Hopkins, he'll kind of he'll roam around a little bit. He'll go towards the net. He'll go higher in the zone. And like JT Miller has that, like he has that commanding ability with the puck where I feel like he can make things happen from that position. So listen, it looks like it would be pretty good and it might change 4 or 5 times. It might not. They might just catch lightning in a bottle and it might just work right away.
Lastly, people are saying this was a very good All-Star weekend, albeit with a low bar. What did you make of it? Was there something that stood out for you?
I was supposed to go down there, and I was under the weather. So All-Star game comes to Toronto. I don't get down there for not even a second of it. So I only got to watch it on TV. Thought the draft was kind of, you know, it's tough to do something like that. Like I feel like there's no playbook on how to do anything like that, unless you're going to just copy the way the NBA does it, I guess. But anyways, the draft it is what it is. It's a little goofy, but I'm happy they brought it back. And then I thought the skills was good. I had no problem with it. I thought, you know, for the most part, guys tried hard. Obviously, Kucherov didn't. That's his decision to do that. And but I thought guys tried hard. I think it was fitting that McDavid won because he is the most skilled player in the league. Obviously, he had a hand in designing it. So I feel like that was fitting. And then the game itself, I actually enjoyed. Like, I actually didn't feel like it was a chore to watch that game. So I think, you know, overall, there was no gimmicks. I feel like it was hockey. There was some good entertainment. I thought the celebrities did a really good job. You know, like Will Arnett and Michael Bublé, you can really tell that those guys are like legit fans
Mhm.
and they actually know a thing or two about hockey. Like
Oh,
they're not just
Arnett talks about hockey way too much on Smartless. Every time he talks about hockey, I think you're alienating like 98% of your audience.
yeah,
but he loves it.
He loves it. And
Yeah.
Bublé, like when Bieksa was talking to Bublé about the differences between the 2011 team and this year's team, it's like he actually had answers. Like he actually had legit, like he remembers watching that team play. Like I just thought that was so cool. I think they, like with having those guys involved, I think it really kind of nailed the celebrity portion of it. Listen, Bieber is what he is, and Tate McRae's performance was awesome. So there was just so many positives for a weekend that's usually kind of riddled with why did they do this? Why did they do that? That's a gimmick. That's stupid. Like the kids, like it's always for the kids. I thought the kids would have got a lot out of it. And I think if you're a hockey fan, for the most part, I don't see why you wouldn't have enjoyed, especially the skills and the game itself.
I'll tell you why I didn't enjoy the skills, Frank Curado. TDL.
Too damn long?
Wow. Especially when you've got a guy like Kucherov half-assing it. Like you say, he didn't have a problem with it. I was glad the Toronto fans got on Kucherov.
Well,
he was trying to make a sham of it, for God's sakes. Like if you don't want to be there, then bow out at the final. But
moment. That's great. Well, emotion at the All-Star game is a good thing.
Wow.
So rare.
I wonder, like, because they had the announcement earlier in the day about the Four Nations Cup, and there was no Russia involved. And I wonder if he's like, you know what, I'm not going to do your dog and pony show if you're not going to, let Russia. I don't know. Like that's just obviously wild
good theory.
Speculation. But
Pouty.
Yeah,
I saw others.
I feel like he's the kind of guy where he's like, this means nothing. So, I'm not gonna sing and dance for you. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I feel like that's the kind of attitude he would have.
I don't know. Like, the passing event just needs to go. The one-timers need to be like big, hard one-timers, not like
I was
half
actually
slappers.
I was wondering that about the one-timers because those passes were really soft.
Yeah.
And some guys, like the guys that have really good one-timers in the league, they'll tell you like, no, send it with a little zip. Like I want.
It's physics, energy in, energy out.
Right.
Yeah. Did you see there was some clips rolling around about like there was an All-Star game in the 90s. I think there was a clip of Tony Amonte when he was playing for Chicago where he had to do like this 5-puck kind of breakaway thing really quick. Why don't we bring that back? That was kind of cool.
That had energy and speed at the very least, whereas a lot of these did not have energy or speed.
You know what? I got one observation on the hardest shot. All these guys, because the game has changed now, everyone's doing this quick little snapper release, right? And especially the defensemen nowadays. Like you just can't load up the big bomb one-timer the way you used to be able to.
Yeah, JT Miller does that one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So guys are using like, 85 flex, 90 flex. Like as my career went on, my flex got whippier. Like it started off with like an 100 flex. I finished my career at 90 because I was like, I just need to get this and just whip it off my stick. So we're not seeing like the 105s, 106s when it comes to the hardest shot anymore. So you see 102 now and you're like, wow. You're like, there were years where 102 would get you like third or fourth place. But I think guys are just using the whippier sticks because that's what you need in a game.
We need Ally Afraidy back with the wood stick.
Just wait till Connor Bedard puts on 10 more pounds, and he'll be winning.
Lastly, did you see Demko snub Swayman on the hug?
I loved it.
You think it was intentional? You think he saw it and said, "Nope, I'm not taking part"?
I kind of do think that, yeah. Like obviously, like the guy's there with his arms in the air for a big hug, and I loved every second of it. Whether like I don't know why he did it. Maybe he was just goofing on like the guy, because he's like, this guy wants a hug. I'm not going to give him a hug. But if it was like a Bruins kind of Canucks thing, I think that's brilliant. I think that's knowing your market and playing to it perfectly. So well done by Thatcher Demko.
Serving notice. You're the best team in the East. We're the best team in the West. We'll see you in the Cup final. Not my job to pump your tires
Exactly.
or give
There's so
you
much.
hugs.
There's so much of this like
Love it.
wax kind of stuff. It's like, you know what? That's kind of cool. Like the cameras are on. It's like, dude, I don't know you. You don't exist. You play for the Bruins. Like,
Dude, I don't know you.
Right. What we need next is the tag team match at WrestleMania, Luongo and Demko against Tim Thomas and Jeremy Swayman.
Oh, yeah, I pay
Man.
for it.
Bring the house down.
I think like Lou would probably want to drop an elbow on Tim Thomas from like the top of the cage or something.
I think most people would. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think Lou would make a good wrestler, actually.
He would, yeah.
Expressive,
Yeah.
cut a good promo. Marva, great stuff,
I
Frank.
just picture him like, I picture him having like some kind of like submission finisher
Right.
move with like the look on his face, like Tapo.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, like,
Some sort of full Nelson. Yeah, we got you now. You're not going anywhere.
like playing up to the crowd, you know,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
something like that.
Oh, amazing.
The figure 4 leg lock.
Jimmy Hart ponytail with the loud jacket, maybe?
Okay, we're off the rails here. Thanks, Frankie. Until next week.
See you guys.
It's happy hour on Sekeres Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.